In 2016, the quiet rural town of Piketon, Ohio, became the backdrop of a massacre so horrific it would leave a scar on the state's history forever. 3 homes, 1 family, 8 lives, taken in cold blood. The victims were all members of the Rhoden family, a close-knit Appalachian clan. On the night of April 21st, into the early hours of the 22nd, they were murdered in their sleep. What made it even more disturbing? 3 children, each under the age of 3, were found alive, spared by killers who showed no mercy to the adults. What kind of person commits such a gruesome act? And why? What began as a seemingly random act of mass murder would soon unravel into a chilling tale of secrets, betrayal, and a motive buried deep in obsession. The first 911 call came from Bobby Jo Manley, sister to one of the victims. She had arrived early that morning to feed the animals at the family farm. What she walked into would haunt her forever. The house was dead silent. The air felt wrong. She called for her brother, for anyone, but no one answered. And then, in the living room, she found him. Christopher Rhoden Sr., the 40-year-old patriarch, had been shot 9 times. 5 to the head and face, 3 to the torso, 1 to the arm, a desperate attempt to shield himself in his sleep. In another room lay Gary Rhoden, Christopher's cousin. 2 shots to the head, 1 so close it left a muzzle imprint. Unlike Chris, Gary never even stirred. No struggle, no warning. And that was just the beginning. Bobby Jo and her brother James rushed to the other homes on the property. In the next house, they discovered Frankie Rhoden, Chris's son, and his fiancée, Hannah Hazel Gilley. Both were dead in bed. Their infant child lay between them, miraculously unharmed. Their 3-year-old was found asleep on the floor. Frankie had been shot 3 times in the face. Hannah had been executed with a shot through the eye, and 4 more followed. It was not just murder, it was a statement. Then came the 3rd house. Dana Rhoden, Chris's wife, was found with 5 bullets to the head, point-blank shots, 1 beneath her chin. In another room, their 16-year-old son, Chris Jr., had been shot twice through the top of his skull. In the final bedroom, their daughter, Hannah Mae Rhoden, was discovered, dead from 2 headshots. Her newborn, just 4 days old, was alive, still nursing from her mother's body. Only Hannah's 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, had escaped the carnage. She had been staying with her father. What could drive someone to do this? To execute a family, yet spare the children? Police descended on the scene, combing through the homes. It wasn't just the brutality that shocked them, it was how clean the crime was. No shell casings, no sign of forced entry, no alarms. Even the family's pit bulls didn't bark. These weren't chaotic killings. They were methodical, surgical. Most chilling of all, every single victim's phone was missing. No calls for help, no cries for mercy. It was clear. The killers had come prepared. This was no robbery gone wrong. It was a calculated extermination. As news spread, the small town of Piketon turned into a whirlwind of grief and suspicion. Theories flew. Was it cartel-related? A drug hit? Chris and his brother Kenneth had prior brushes with the law. Authorities found marijuana grow operations near Kenneth's barn and whispers of a cockfighting ring. Maybe this was the price of criminal entanglement. Rumors swirled about ties to the Mexican cartel, but that level of execution felt too personal. Others pointed fingers at the cornbread mafia, a violent Appalachian syndicate. but even they had never pulled off something this brutal. Then the phone started ringing. A cousin named Donald Stone had been trying to reach Kenneth Rhoden. No answer. He drove to Kenneth's house a few miles away and walked into yet another nightmare. Kenneth had been executed too. A single shot to the eye, point blank. That made 8. 8 members of the Rhoden family, all wiped out in one night. The entire county was gripped in fear. No suspects, no motive, just blood, silence, and a horrifying mystery. Who had done this, and why had they been so thorough? Investigators were drowning in leads and theories, but no answers. They seized everything from the Rhoden homes, trailers, vehicles, electronics, hoping to find a clue. But weeks passed, then months. And yet, one strange detail lingered in the background: the custody of little Sophia. Jake Wagner, ex-boyfriend to Hannah Rhoden, filed for custody immediately after the murders. The paperwork claimed that Hannah had granted him full custody in case something happened to her. That timing, too perfect, and the document, suspect. Jake's family, the Wagners, suddenly packed up and moved to Alaska. For a year, they disappeared. And when they returned, everything seemed normal. Too normal. The Wagners reintegrated into Pike County like nothing had happened. They got jobs at a trucking company. Jake even remarried. But beneath the surface, investigators were watching closely. The Wagner family was known for being tight-knit to a disturbing degree. Homeschooling, isolation, a rigid family structure with Angela Wagner, the matriarch, pulling strings even after divorcing Billy, her husband. Control wasn't just a habit, it was their way of life. Jake and Hannah's relationship had started when she was just 13. He was nearly 18. It began at a county fair over a shared interest in rabbits. Chris Rhoden, Hannah's father, surprisingly approved, under strict conditions. They had to be chaperoned. But as the years passed, their relationship grew toxic. Jake became possessive, even violent. One alleged incident saw him choking Hannah. She tried to leave. She ran to her father. But the Wagners weren't about to let her or Sophia go. Hannah made a desperate post on Facebook. She would never give up custody of her child to Jake, not even in death. What she didn't know was that the Wagners had hacked her account. That message sealed her fate. It wasn't just Jake's rage. It was the entire family. Angela and Billy Wagner allegedly sat down with Jake and his brother George. They voted. They planned. And their goal? Eliminate anyone who could challenge their custody of Sophia. The plan wasn't spontaneous. It was methodical, cold. 7 names were on the list. They started buying items for their operation: shoes to avoid leaving footprints, bug detectors, homemade silencers, maps. Nothing was random. The Wagners weren't just committing murder. They were engineering an execution. After the killings, they acted fast. Legal filings, fake stories, sympathy plays. But cracks started to show. Jake's wife fled. Then Angela disappeared too. Whispers began to spread. And then, at last, the walls closed in. Investigators made their move. In November 2018, the Wagner family was arrested. Billy, Angela, Jake, and George were all charged with aggravated murder. The courtroom was filled with grim silence as the truth came pouring out. Jake eventually pled guilty and admitted to shooting 5 of the 8 victims himself. He confessed that his family had helped plan the entire massacre. All of it, for one child, for custody, for control. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't gangs. It was something far more disturbing. A family who believed they could kill their way to possession of a child. This wasn't just a true crime story. It was a modern-day horror, born from obsession, fear, and control. And it left behind 3 children who would grow up without parents, all because of one family's twisted idea of love. The Rhoden Massacre stands as one of the darkest crimes in American history, not just for its brutality, but for the cold, methodical motive behind it. And the question that still echoes through Pike County: how far would you go for family? The Wagners meticulously selected shoes that didn't fit their sons, brand new, untouched, and untraceable. These ill-fitting shoes were part of a calculated plan to leave behind footprints that couldn't be linked to them. This level of detail marked the beginning of their elaborate preparations. They also acquired .22 caliber rifles and semi-automatic pistols, chosen for their quiet operation and minimal recoil, ideal for close-range, covert killings. To further muffle the sound, they obtained suppressors, reducing gunfire to a mere cough, ensuring neighbors wouldn't hear the shots. To eliminate physical evidence, they used brass catchers, pouches attached to their firearms to collect spent shells. In the months leading up to the murders, Jake and George practiced extensively in secluded woods behind their property. Investigators later found bullets lodged in trees and remnants of homemade suppressors, confirming their relentless rehearsals. Their preparation extended beyond weaponry. They purchased a cell phone jamming device to prevent any calls for help during the killings. They even dyed their hair to alter their appearances and avoid identification. Angela Wagner, the matriarch, forged documents stating that if Hannah Rhoden died, custody of her daughter Sophia would go to Jake and his family. These fake papers were intended to be revealed post-murders, portraying the Wagners as concerned relatives stepping in for the child's welfare. Meanwhile, the family surveilled the Rhoden homes, learning the routines of every member, when they came and went, who stayed up late, and who had visitors. They gathered all necessary information, setting the stage for their plan. The night of the murders coincided with Hannah Rhoden's recovery at home after giving birth to her second child. Sophia was staying with the Wagners, providing the opportunity they needed. They drove to the Rhoden property, familiar with its layout and residence. Billy Wagner entered Chris Rhoden Sr.'s home under the guise of discussing a drug deal, while Jake and George waited in the truck. Inside, Billy gained his victim's trust, setting the stage for the ensuing violence. The Wagners moved from trailer to trailer, executing their plan with brutal precision. They killed adults and teenagers alike, but spared the young children, including the newborn, as planned. Their aim was to leave no witnesses who could testify against them. After the murders, they vanished into the night, leaving behind a scene of horror. To dispose of evidence, they abandoned the truck, discarded clothes and shoes, and hid the weapons. In a gruesome twist, they sent their cousin, a fisherman, a gift: the murder weapons, shell casings, and suppressor remnants encased in cement-filled buckets, turned into boat anchors, and dropped into a local lake. The Wagners went to great lengths to ensure they wouldn't be caught, maintaining a public facade of grief-stricken family members. They pretended to be innocent, heartbroken individuals, even after returning to Ohio from Alaska. However, cracks in their story began to appear. Perhaps it was the two women who left the family, or someone overhearing a conversation at work. Whatever it was, law enforcement started piecing together the puzzle. They planted listening devices in the family's work trucks and tapped their phones, gathering evidence. The Wagners were questioned, but their involvement remained a mystery to the public. Investigators worked tirelessly, connecting clues until they could charge the family with the murders. Eventually, George Billy Wagner III, his wife Angela, and their sons George IV and Edward Jake Wagner were arrested. As the investigation progressed, the Wagners tried to maintain their innocence. But 2 years into incarceration, Jake cracked under pressure, confessing to all 23 charges. In exchange for removing the death penalty for himself and his family, he agreed to reveal everything. Jake admitted to personally killing 5 victims, with his father and brother responsible for the remaining 3. He also disclosed that while his mother didn't participate in the killings, she was deeply involved in the conspiracy, cover-up, and forgery of custody documents. Investigators uncovered key evidence supporting Jake's confession: text messages aligning with his account, weapons hidden in cement anchors, bullets matching those found in the bodies, and evidence of homemade suppressors recovered from various locations, including the Wagner property. Remnants of burned-out suppressors were also found in the woods. Jake's sentencing brought some resolution. He received life in prison with the possibility of parole in 32 years. Though reactions were mixed, his confession was crucial to closing this chapter. Angela Wagner was sentenced to 30 years for her role in the conspiracy, despite not being directly involved in the killings. Her involvement in the plot and subsequent cover-up led to her conviction. The sentencing hearing was emotionally charged, with survivors condemning the Wagners' cruelty. George Wagner IV, who chose to go to trial instead of cooperating, received a harsher sentence: 8 consecutive life terms without parole. His refusal to admit guilt and face trial made him ineligible for the same considerations Jake received. The case against the Wagner family nears its final stages, with only George Billy Wagner III left to stand trial. As the family's patriarch, his trial is one of the most anticipated moments in this devastating case. Imagine being one of the surviving children in the Rhoden family, growing up to learn that nearly your entire family was wiped out in one horrifying night over a custody dispute. Carrying that truth for the rest of your life, no punishment could truly measure up. As justice slowly takes shape, with more Wagner family members held accountable, the people of Pike County and the survivors cling to the hope that this painful chapter is finally ending. But let's discuss. What do you think truly led law enforcement to focus on the Wagners? Was it inconsistencies, failed alibis, or something they couldn't hide? Do you believe the death penalty should have remained an option for such a brutal crime? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out the next video. I think you'll find it insightful. Thank you once again for watching. Like, subscribe to the channel Into the Crime Depths, and turn on notifications.